everyone. We're now going to move to the first panel, which is winter sports and the industry. And we are going to have the three presentation, Marka Hagestad, which is Principal ESG Consultant at Stanstek, Jesse Rittner, who is a PhD, ABD, I think, at the University of Texas, working on snow in Texas. That's admirable. And Jeffrey Ox, who is the CEO and founder of Sync Performance. So we're going to have a presentation, and then we're going to have a panel and a bit of discussion. Marka, off you go.
Hello, everyone, and thank you to Federica for having me. I will talk about the importance of snow in winter sports to the U.S. economy and how it's mobilizing the industry to support legislation to rapidly reduce emissions. I'm grateful to supporting the Empowering Women in Alpine Skiing project. I'm an economist who's been working in consulting for over 30 years at the intersection between the economy and the environment. And I'm also a passionate skier and snowboarder who has taught skiing in Colorado and in Oregon. And now I live in Silverton, Colorado at 9,300 feet and plan on spending most of my free time this winter backcountry skiing and splitboarding in the beautiful San Juan Mountains. I will share with you results from a study I did for Protect Our Winners and REI, along with Elizabeth Borowkowski from University of New Hampshire and Rebecca Hill from Colorado State University. We examined how snow is changing and impacting participation in winter sports and what the economic impacts have been. We completed the report in 2018 on 2016 data, and winters in 2016 were 0.8 degrees Celsius warmer than they were prior to 1960. This has led to reduced snow cover, meaning a shorter period of time that the ground is covered in snow. Therefore, ski resorts have been trending to later resort openings in the season and earlier closings. Warmer winters have been accompanied by heavier and wetter snow, and more winter precipitation falling as rain instead of snow. So it's somewhat obvious that warming winters pose a serious challenge for the winter recreation industry. First, we looked at participation in winter sports. The US has the world's second largest ski industry, following the Alps in Europe. However, the number of ski resorts in the US is steadily decreasing. In the 1980s, there were over 700 ski areas in operation, whereas today there are approximately 480. Participation in winter sports grew slightly between 2007 and 2016, but in the last few years, we've seen a large increase, with now close to 30 million people participating in some form of winter sport, such as skiing, snowboarding, cross-country skiing, and snowmobiling. Skiers spend money when they go skiing on things like equipment, hotels, restaurants, lift tickets, retail stores, and gas stations. Expenditures per day were estimated at $159 for skiers and snowboarders and $128 per day for snowmobilers. And the equipment purchases were spread out over the life of their use. And we put these expenditures into a regional economic model. We modeled the national and state level economic contributions from expenditures made during ski and snowmobile visits using the INPLAN model, which is a regional input-output economic model developed by the U.S. Forest Service. It determines how changes in one industry affects others to estimate total economic impacts. The model calculates employment, labor income, and overall value added to the economy. The economic modeling revealed that expenditures from skiers, snowboarders, and snowmobilers during the winter of 2015-16 supported over 191,000 jobs nationwide and generated a total of $6.9 billion in wages, adding a total of $11.3 billion in economic value to the national economy, or $20.3 billion in total output. Total output is comprised of direct, indirect, and induced effects. So the direct effect are direct expenditures themselves. The indirect comes from links in the supply chain, such as local industries buying goods and services from other local industries. And then induced effects are a result of employee household spending on personal consumption. We looked at results by state. Colorado led the U.S. in economic contribution from winter sports, with over 43,000 jobs and $2.6 billion in total economic value added in 2016. California had the next highest, with over 21,000 employed and 1.2 billion in economic value added. Vermont and New York led the eastern US, collectively generating more than 1.2 billion in value added to their economies. And again, these are revenues from skiing and snowmobiling only. Further economic contributions occur from winter events such as ski races and all the other winter sports: cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, skate skiing, backcountry skiing, heli and pat skiing, sledding and tubing, ski biking. Data limitations from all of those sports prevented their inclusion in our economic modeling, but their economic contributions are noteworthy. And several of those sports are growing, such as ski biking. Human-powered sports such as snowshoeing and backcountry skiing are the fastest growing segment of winter recreation. Therefore, the results of our modeling represent an extremely lower bound of the estimate of total economic activity from winter recreation. So while the number of people skiing changes only slightly from year to year, the number of days that people go skiing fluctuates considerably from year to year, ranging from 50 million up to 65 million. An individual's decision to ski on a particular day is influenced by a variety of factors that include amount of snow, ticket prices, travel costs, disposable income, skiing ability, and more. We examined the correlation between skier visits and snowfall across the country and found a positive relationship between snow and skier visits. All of the years that show the decline in skier visits correlated with low snowfall, with the exception of 2009. So we looked at the relationship between skier days and snowfall, and we found them positively correlated. And so all of the years that show the decline in skier visits correlated with low snowfall, with the exception of 2009, which was a recession year. That supports the finding that skiers are also responsive to economic conditions. And then the winter 2012 had an extremely low snowfall and warm winter temperatures across the country. This season saw the largest decrease in skier visits, with a decrease in over 9 million visits from the previous winter, and 5.7.
Sorry, Mark. Can you try to take out the earphones, because probably is that is breaking. The sound is breaking.
This one?
Yep.
Okay. So we found that there's a strong relationship between snowfall and skier visits. And all of the years show a decline in skier visits, correlated with low snowfall, with the exception of 2009, which was a recession year. And so that supports the finding that skiers are also responsive to economic conditions. And the winter of 2012 had extremely low snowfall and warm winter temperatures across the country. This season saw the largest decrease in skier visits, with a decrease in over 9 million visits from the previous winter. And then last year was a season of historic snowfall across the West, and ski areas logged a record of 64.7 million skier visits. We examined how skier visits change between the low snowfall years and high snowfall years. So we looked at the 5 lowest snowfall years and the 5 highest snowfall years. So while average annual US skier visits are around 55 million, we found in high snowfall years, skier visits were about 220,000 higher than average. And in low snowfall years, skier visits were about 470,000 lower. In high snow years, the increased participation added an extra 693 million in value added and 11,800 extra US jobs. And in the low snow years, the reduced participation decreased value added by 1 billion and cost 17,400 jobs. Therefore, the low snow years have larger decreases in visitation and economic impacts than the increases experienced in the high snow years. So what are ski resorts doing in response? As Auden pointed out, advocacy is the most important action a business can take. We will not reach the goals of the Paris Agreement if businesses focus on their own operations. Resorts like Aspen and A-Basin are using their voice and influence to tackle climate change at the policy level. The National Ski Areas Association and Protect Our Winters are both active in advocacy and engage with politicians on supporting climate legislation. NSAA advocates for climate solutions at the federal level and assists states with their climate initiatives. And also resorts are educating their customers about what they can do to support climate regulations by voting in local, state, and federal elections for candidates that support strong climate action. And they are also helping their customers make it easier to take transit and offset their emissions traveling to resorts. A-Basin offers a Snow Huggers Club add-on to any season pass, where for $30, guests can offset their carbon emissions from traveling to and from the ski area and support the High Country Conservation Center, a longtime partner of A-Basin. Resorts are increasing in investments in sustainability projects to reduce their own emissions, such as energy efficiency of buildings, snowmaking efficiency, on-site renewables, or working with utilities to develop contracts for clean energy, food and beverage waste reduction and recycling. NSAA runs a sustainable slopes program, helping ski areas implement sustainable practices, and the Climate Challenge program, helping ski areas measure and reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And then for adapting to climate change, resorts are increasing snowmaking, changing their dates of operations, as I mentioned, opening a little later and closing earlier in some cases. The industry is becoming dominated by a few larger corporations with geographically diverse resorts, ensuring that at least some of the resorts have snow in a given period of time. And then resorts are investing in other recreation options off snow. So Costa, they found the report very useful when they were going to speak with politicians on Capitol Hill, and when impacts were translated into dollars. It's unfortunate that it's challenging to get people's attention on this when we're talking about human suffering on a large scale, but dollars did get their attention, and the report was widely cited in the media. So it was useful to increase dialogue on the industries reliant upon colder temperatures. However, POW has been emphasizing that while talking about the loss of snow hits home, it is a demarcation line that signals the larger global suffering that is underway. The outdoor states' desire to protect their landscapes and sports is not the end game, but a catalyst to working to build a more equitable future for all.
Okay.
Good morning.
Last but not least, Jeff.
Okay, so hi, my name is Jeffrey Oakes. I currently reside in Vail, Colorado. President, CEO, co-founder of a brand called Sync Performance. We are a brand built on the foundation of alpine ski racing. About 10 years ago, we launched in the spring of 2014, and have been building a global brand since. We have, like I said, really focused on that niche of alpine ski racing. And as I said to Jesse, I feel seen because alpine ski racing is probably one of the biggest abusers as it relates to transportation, as it comes to finding snow in all corners of the globe. And then also to that early season training is a big factor with snowmaking. So, but I do want to just briefly show a video of, Jesse's question about why, is this worth saving? Is it, is this something that we do care about? And I think that, I'm born in Massachusetts, raised in Vermont ski racing, then moved to Colorado. And so I have that, passion for the industry, passion for skiing. It's part of my identity. And yes, I do believe, we want to try to save it as best we can. But, inevitably there might be a point in time where we can't. But so anyway, I don't have a slide deck to prepare or present here, but I do want to just really invoke a conversation about, what the outdoor industry as it relates to technical manufacturers of product are doing in relation to climate change. We are, hold on, sorry, we are a young brand in the reality of the winter outdoor sports industry. 10 years is a baby. When you think of the competitors, Helly Hansen's over 100 years old, North Face, Patagonia, they're 40, 50 plus years old. So we are coming in a time, at a different time, to the in different zeitgeist, if you will, of global change and climate change and all sorts of things. Obviously, Patagonia has been the leader, amazing things of what they've done to really incite conversation around climate change. But that said, there's still a consumption problem, and at the root of everything, we are consumers, and you can't live without consuming. And that is just a paradox of this. I think the ski industry, right? Jesse spoke a little bit about that, is something that we are constantly evaluating as a winter sports brand. Is oh man, how much do we go on sale on Black Friday and sell more jackets? And that's going to sell. That's going to help us keep us in business. But on the flip side of that, what on the if we sell more jackets, are we in business to help solve, the Earth's crisis and, climate change? And I think that, we are a capitalist nation and we vote with our dollars. And, I think it's something that we've navigated to a point where, brands say and do a lot of different things. But, their actions and kind of what they really promote, is important. And so think, we are a brand built on alpine ski racing. As I said, that really means, people who are skiing 150 plus days a year, and they're training in the gym, trying to get better 360 days a year, right? So this is a lifestyle of the sport. There are only about 30,000 registered USSA members in the US, and so it's a very small segment when you think about the 10 million annual skiers that take action on the slopes every year. And but we found that through our research and involving those athletes who are competing and skiing 150 days a year, is we get important feedback from a gear standpoint that helps us develop more durable, more functional product for athletes, and that means recreational skiers, right? So we are attempting to build product, and this is one of the things that we're trying to solve is gear in use longer, right? Yeah, I think that's a big component of climate change and consumption, and making sure that we aren't consuming more than we have to by buying, want do ski wear on Amazon, right? I'm seeing that brand, and it's just an off the shelf brand that you're getting on Amazon now, and I'm seeing that all over Vail, to be honest. And it get disheartened because you could spend a couple extra $100 and buy a jacket that we've tested on these athletes who are skiing 500 days a year, or sorry, 150 days a year, but that could last 5 to 6 to 7 years, and in the case of someone who averages 10 days a year, that could last them potentially their lifetime, right? I think if you are a skier and been on a ski hill, you do recognize that old 1980 spider jacket that your uncle has been wearing since the day he started skiing, and you're like, wow, well, that's well, one, it's probably not cool potentially, but also two, like, that's impressive, right? That he's been able to wear that same piece of equipment for a long time. And so we're in business definitely to help solve that problem of how do we build and convince the consumer, if they inevitably need a new jacket, that is, I think we want to make sure that not everyone needs a new jacket, and that's it's kind of goes against every fiber in my body as a founder of a retail brand. But it is something that I would like everyone to consider listening to this, is say, just take one extra step and say, is this something that could be repaired? Is this something that could be, I don't know, reused in some way possible, right? And so the three big areas in my mind for the focus on technical outerwear industry and how we are attempting to react to climate change. I think for Sync specifically is evaluating the global supply chain. We produce all over the world, you know, and most of our outerwear, for better or worse, is coming from southeastern China. And I would say honestly, I don't have the stat, but it's from that neck of the woods. I would say 85%, 80 to 85% of outerwear is coming from that area of the world, which is amazing, right? When you think about what does a Chinese manufacturer know about skiing or skiing 150 days a year, right? So there's this disconnect of, you know, us having to like communicate to a manufacturing partner how brutal Geo is on his jacket and zippers and gear. And, you know, I think that is, these ski racers in particular are these test subjects that, you know, are ones to pay attention to when it comes to, if you can make it stand up to their, you know, their level of commitment to the sport, then I think it should ultimately be fine and, you know, accommodate every recreational skier. And so when we talk about evaluating a global supply chain, you know, we are actively resourcing constantly. And what resourcing would mean is, you know, doing a heavily investigating each of our manufacturing partners and identifying if we can move them. You know, I think you've probably heard the buzzword nearshoring recently. You know, that's become a big element of manufacturing in the last few years. And unfortunately, for technical outerwear and apparel, it's not going to happen. The infrastructure left the U.S. It left North. Now I'm getting back into doom and gloom, but it left the States and it left North America back in the 1980s. There was, 1991, 56.2% of all clothes purchased in the U.S. were American made. By 2012, it was down to 2.5%. You know, in a span of 20 years, that basically is gone. So, you know, let that sink in, right? So we, you know, and what went with that was the infrastructure, like I said. So the mills that were producing the fabric, you know, the zipper manufacturers, any type of skilled labor. So here's another stat: 1 in 6 people in the world are employed by the fashion industry. So that's, you know, pretty staggering, and as relates to, you know, the scale of what we're talking about here. But, you know, so like I said, what went with that? All the infrastructure went overseas, and unfortunately, with technical outerwear, you know, there's seam taping, there's very intricate design details that and capabilities that just don't exist in the States anymore. And so, you know, that said, you know, we are looking at how do we make that jacket? Okay, unfortunately, it's going to be made overseas. What happens when it gets here? Can it last for at least 5 to 6 years new? And then is there another 10 years in that jacket's lifespan that we can get out of it? Whether that's through, we're working on a couple initiatives, and mainly gear washing and drying. And so really paying attention to the education around washing and drying gear. I don't think people don't realize how important that is as it relates to the performance of a piece of apparel. And obviously it uses resource, but you will get out a lot. You'll get out years if you take care of that. A dirty, oily, stained jacket doesn't perform as well as a clean, fresh, dried, clean, you know, jacket. So, you know, there are things that we're trying to educate around the space of, you know, what are things you can do to keep your apparel and gear in life longer. And then it goes one step further, and like, what's the decommissioning process, right? And so working with a partner down in Denver to pull out all of the usable ingredients of the jacket, if you will. So you know, down recycling and zipper recycling. And so, you know, we have a large element to our business, which is teams and clubs and corporations. So you think of embroidered jackets or logoed apparel, right? That becomes, unfortunately, that is something that is a bane of my existence, because it's again a paradox where we make a lot of money off of that team market, and people are so, you know, infatuated with their logo that they want it on everything. But what it does to the garment is it basically becomes unusable past the point of that team use. And so what we're trying to educate in that, you know, we work with about 110 clubs in North America. And what we're trying to educate them on is, you know, putting less sponsors on the jacket, and then so changing it less, right? Changing things have less, if you change less things, it'll have less ripple effect, and we don't have to decommission, you know, your 100 team jackets every year, right? And so, you know, that's a big component of, you know, just education around, you know, it's maybe not directly related to climate change, but it's one small thing that a brand can do, and understanding how do we help solve for the consumption problem that I spoke to in the beginning, right? It's, you know, it's all comes back to that, right? So if we can consume less, help these teams consume less, you know, and not to say we're not going to profit off that, because we will resell a used jacket, right? Like that is something that we would build into our business model. And it just, you know, it has so much ripple effect as far as transportation, back to Jesse's comment about, you know, getting that apparel from China to here or wherever it may be. And so all those things have a really big impact. We are actively, when we look at global supply chain, we're actively looking at a remnant strategy. So remnants would be taking leftover fabric, whether that's technical apparel or technical fabric, that's left over at the mill from either a bigger brand. And we, you know, this is the beauty of being a young and up and coming, only 10-year-old brand, is that we have flexibility and nimbleness to react to changing environments, where a lot of these other big brands are, you know, you can't really change your ways, right? It's really, really challenging to make that needle move. And so we are capitalizing on that, where we go to the factory floor and say, hey, what's left over? And we're not necessarily having to produce new, which I think is a big, you know, yes, it's new, but that fabric has already been produced, right? So we're solving a few different problems. One, for the manufacturer, clean up their storage and space, solving a problem for ourselves, where we can create a piece of apparel at a much lower minimum order quantity, because that is a big issue within our space too, is these high minimum order quantities. You know, if you go to Vietnam, you have to order 2,000 to 5,000 pieces at any given time, which, you know, doesn't sound like a lot maybe, but you know, when we want to sell, you know, I think the 300 to 500 range per annual, you know, is much more stomachable. And so, you know, we are about to launch in this spring our first spring and summer active wear line, completely made out of remnants fabric. So that is something that we are pretty excited about, and can't wait to share. But it, you know, it's taken a lot of time and effort to source, you know, this fabric that will arguably just end up in a landfill or the dumpster or the ocean or somewhere, you know, and we basically save that. And I'm not saying we're saviors or anything, but it's one thing that we can do to contribute to, you know, keeping that stuff in use for longer, or making sure it just doesn't end up in the wrong place. And then the third big area of focus right now for, I think, the technical outerwear and industry is PFAS. And I don't know how much anybody knows about PFAS, but I'm going to butcher it, but perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl. So PFAS are chemicals used to make fluoropolymer coatings and products that resist heat, oil, stains, grease, and water. These have extremely negative effects on the environment. They're called forever chemicals. That's kind of the other term that they're used for, or used in this conversation, which means they don't break down in the environment. So they, you know, you see this conversation around ski wax, mainly, and then now in the US as well, with you know, a local Aspen brand, Mountain Flow Eco Wax. They're doing a good job at spreading the word. But these PFAS, you know, where do you find them? In durable water repellents, so DWR. So any coating on a jacket that's makes it waterproof. Ski wax, like I said, Gore-Tex, that's a huge component of PFAS, so Gore-Tex membranes, and any type of water stain repellent treatments. So this is I'm not an expert on that. I'm learning more and more every day, but there's a massive amount of legislation coming out in the next couple of years that will change the way manufacturers of gear operate in the sense of how we deal with waterproofing and all that type of stuff. So that is, again, outward looking, but over the next 3 years, you know, if you probably likely have a jacket right now that has PFAS in it, which is toxic. And so it's just a consideration to understand, you know, what we need to do about decommissioning all that product, and then kind of coming up with a solution that, you know, is PFAS free, if you will. And so, like I said, 3 big buckets: evaluating the global supply chain, sustainable production, meaning remnants programs, type stuff like that, and then, you know, really that kind of chemical element, so PFAS free clothing. So anyway, I think that's all I have, Fed, but
All right, no, that was super interesting. Thank you very much. I'm trying to continue. So let's open to the Q&A. If I can just go back to gallery. Okay, here we are. And I hope you can see Jesse as well from home. Now I have a question from home, and so we start from this. Cornelia Base: what if the racing circuits did not start the season before Christmas? How much would that save in snowmaking? Jesse, I guess this is for you.
This is for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't tell you what it would save today. I'm, you know, not an economist and a historian, so I'm better at the past. So you'd have to ask somebody. Marka probably would be more qualified maybe to answer that. So also I just want to say, Marka, I've read your study multiple times and it's great and it's been very valuable to me. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. Great. As well.
Terrific. And can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay.
You want to answer that? Otherwise, we have another. You want to answer how much it would save?
And so we would just need to know the portion of skiers that were, you know, those racing skiers. And so we could look at the time periods and then the portion of skiers that they're involved and do some portion of that.
Okay. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, historically, we've used the glaciers to do the early season training, so we didn't need snowmaking. But now people are discovering how much we're manipulating the glaciers and ruining the glaciers just to keep ski racing going. And we failed miserably this fall, so people should be waking up, but probably not.
Yeah, I mean,
the FIS isn't waking up.
The FIS got caught this year, like tearing apart glaciers, I think, in order to create.
Well, they've been doing it for years and years. They even have snowmaking in here to some glacier. Pete's telling them make ice and spread it. Yeah. So talk about carbon footprint.
You know, during your presentation, it came to my mind that you said, if I'm correct, that snowmaking in the US started in 1949. And where I come from in Italy, we actually put our first chair up in 1949, and snowmaking wouldn't start until the 1980s, actually. The very reason why Alta Badia got the World Cup was that because we were among the very, very few in Italy that had the Alps that had actually artificial snowmaking, which, you know, makes a huge difference in all you say.
So I can say that I've had this conversation with people in Europe a lot, and it's interesting because I don't know who to trust, but I talked to a lot of people who are either snowmaking engineers, design snowmaking systems, or design snowmaking. And a lot of them say they were working in Europe by 1965, and almost everyone says they're working in Europe by 1970. Who wasn't?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know what that extent is because I don't study Europe. There's actually somebody whose name I cannot recall who's doing that work as a historian. So keep an eye out if you, I don't know, if you care.
Then we have another question. Thank you for your presentation. I have two questions related to the snowmaking process. Is there a relevant difference in snowmaking for downhill competition compared to cross-country or biathlon? Also, how do you think the candidacy of Salt Lake City for the 2030 Winter Olympics could affect the climate change perception of a national level, knowing that there is the need for some events to have a secured way of producing snow for the competition that should be hosted in case of the city wins the bidding process?
So I can give some fun facts on the Olympics and snowmaking. In 1960 at Palisades Tahoe, they actually hired cloud seeders because they were worried there wasn't going to be enough snow. Every Olympics since 1980 has used snowmaking. And so just on that level, it's not new. Artificial snow makes a better race course, frankly, and just better jumps and things than pure natural snow. That's all I really have on that. Just some fun facts.
Well, the Pittsburgh Olympics, they used the army and soldiers to
Yeah,
sweep
they
snow,
moved
put it
snow.
on its foot, so this
Yeah,
man moves snow.
I mean, in 1932, they actually had closing ceremonies before they finished all of the competitions because it rained and they had to delay things. So there is an extent to which, like, I don't know, trying to deal with this problem has just been a 90-year problem at this point.
Yep, go ahead.
In the sustainability and the
Louder.
for sustainability and what we've done now in ski racing, you have to go indoors to the ski
Right.
domes.
Yeah.
So we're not like going away from that. We're increasing it. Now we have to have buildings, we have to have, you know, ice. So
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Thinking we'll be racing the Olympics indoor slow.
Yeah, well, if you think of Beijing, it has been the least sustainable Olympics ever, with only artificial snow, with heavy chemicals that made it very hard for athletes to actually compete on it, right? Gio?
This is kind of what he was talking about. What do you think about the 2030 or 2036 Eastern ski games that Saudi Arabia plans to host or Dubai plans to host, completely indoor?
I mean, it's all a little bit ridiculous, right? Like, I don't really know what to say other than the fact that, like, these solutions feel like not the reason that we all love skiing, right? Like, we like skiing because it allows us to connect with snow, connect with mountains, right? There's like a human level of this, and I was never a ski racer, so I don't necessarily have like the need for speed in the same way. But I don't know. I mean, it's just, to me, it's just sad, but that's just personal feelings about it. I don't know how you guys feel about that. You want to chime in?
Well, the Saudis have the money, so it's doable. It's doable, but is somebody gonna step in and say, like a fist and say, we're not doing indoor ski racing?
Do we need a ski resort in the desert?
Yeah, exactly.
Probably not.
Yeah, but this is where the Asian Winter Games are going to take place in 2029, in the middle of a desert in Saudi Arabia, in a completely artificial environment. And this is why I was calling on FIS. I mean, FIS made the decision to award them. That, and it's completely nonsensical. Yeah, it's lots of money, and this is we don't know exactly to whom, but it's completely ridiculous. Or the races that take place every year in Dubai, you know, which are not rigged but almost. So anyway,
I got asked to participate in development of a ski resort in Saudi Arabia and help to make it carbon neutral, and I declined any involvement in that project. Because trying to make a ski resort in Saudi Arabia carbon neutral is a joke.
It is absolutely a joke, but you know, if people don't, at this point, I think after Chervinia, Zermatt, I think it's up to the athletes to, to stand and say, we're not going to do it again. Twice in a row, it's impossible to race. Yep, and they should just refuse. Scott.
Yeah, so I have a question that sort of combines Jesse and Jeff's comments a little bit. One of the really interesting things, Jeff, that as you were talking about plastics and polymers and things like that, and then Jesse in terms of transportation, and this isn't just carbon in a general sense, this is specifically the oil industry, right? And since we're talking about Saudi Arabia, it finally kind of clicked in my head that all of these developments take place in this particular post-war period in which the oil industry has become or becomes more or less the central focus of global capital, right? And global flows. And so there is, in a sense, maybe like an alternative path not taken possibility, right? And maybe this also relates to questions that have been asked about Europe, is that, what if instead of interstates to ski resorts, there were railroads to ski resorts, right? Or, since there is at least sort of a railroad that runs along I-70, what if you could actually get on it and arrive somewhere within 6 hours of when you were supposed to arrive, which doesn't happen if anyone's ever tried to take that train. You're always at least 6 hours late. So, I mean, and then at the same time, when in the 70s and 80s, or really starting in the late 60s, when the car industry and the gas industry, gasoline industry starts to flatline a little bit, especially in the United States, because it's hit a certain amount of whatever surplus, right? Then we get all this influence, then we get all this investment in plastics at the same time. And so I'm curious to what extent now we can sort of maybe ask these questions about the linkages, not just with climate change in general, but the specifics of things like the oil industry. And all the way from 1959, right? And the sort of mass market for cars really exploding in the US along the same path as snowmaking, all the way now to Dubai and Saudi Arabia. And, there are oil producing countries that have real snow, like Russia and the United States and Canada and even Iran, right? But like, we're building these things in places where not only is there not real snow, but you're literally building it on top of an oil field, regardless of where you build it, right? So I don't know if that's really a question, to be honest, but it's a curiosity and something. So Jeff, I was wondering if you could sort of say more about how that links into your industry specifically. And then Jesse, thinking more about the sort of path not taken historical part of the question.
Jeff, did you hear that? Jeff, did you hear that?
I did, yeah. Not sure if it's a question either, but I can definitely say, I think, yeah, we are unfortunately a product of our environment in some ways, and we had to build a business somehow, and using the current resources, we weren't doing something that was like new and different in the sense that we were building a jacket differently with different materials. We were sort of using off the shelf oil-based products. And so, I don't know necessarily that linkage, I think it's on the little, I was just thinking about as you're talking, it's like, well, just don't watch the Olympics. I don't know, like just be kind of like, it's the attention economy. And if we can all say like, we're not going to support that in a big way, then like, I mean, Marcus sounds like she's already done that, and just like, saying no. I don't know. I don't have the answer necessarily, but if we can sort of come together and just, not support it, then from an eyeball standpoint, I think that's where like, I don't know if Saudi Arabia's motives, who knows, right? But like in the States, it's all about the eyeballs and getting people to watch. And if it's it's a little different in the States, I think, but, you know, I don't know. I'll have to keep thinking about the linkage there, but.
I can
Jesse and then,
do that somewhat quick, which is that, from 1973 to about 1985, the ski industry's only thing that they consistently lobbied for was the production of more oil. And most of it, and they were equally against the environmental movement as they were against the Reagan administration, because they saw both of them as a threat. You also see Sinclair Oil owned Sun Valley and some other places for a long time. The owner of Aspen was an oil tycoon for a long time. Some of this you see former politicians who have deep ties to the oil industry. And it's really notable when you go through industry periodicals that they talk a lot about the importance of transportation and oil until they start talking about climate change. And then they suddenly don't want to talk about the links between their industry and transportation.
yep,
I don't know if it started in 74 or 75, but the state of Colorado and their governor said, we're not having the Olympics in Beaver Creek Steamboat. And we canceled the Olympics in Colorado, which was big. He got a lot of pushback about that, and then Innsbruck picked it up, but that was pretty brave.
There's a really good book about that called Colorado Powder Keg, written by somebody up at CSU.
Colorado Powder what?
Colorado Powder Keg.
Gio?
What do you think the environmental impact could be if there was a train from Denver all the way up to about Auburn or somewhere?
You've saved that question for this afternoon, because we have a panel where we also, CU is actually making an effort to reducing its carbon footprint in transportation to skiing. So the College of Engineering has been creating solutions. So hold that question for this afternoon. Nick?
Sort of speaking about the transportation thing as well.
Louder.
Speaking about the transportation thing as well, I did quite a few research projects and stuff on why North America doesn't do hasn't like evolved into train transportation for public transportation instead of vehicle traffic. And it's because, especially I did it more based on the West Coast where it's super mountainous and stuff. And on average, no one or very few people would take the train unless it was more than half an hour quicker than taking a vehicle. And to make high-speed trains and the cost that it would take for that to happen is just the government doesn't think it's worth the cost. This is why we are still with car traffic, because of the convenience, and you can go whenever you want, and trains will just be slower at the moment.
All right, but we can retake it. Duvan, last question.
I have like a two-parter. First one will maybe sound dumb. I've never skied before. Is there a massive difference between the artificial snow and the normal snow?
Yes.
And so between that and the environmental impact, from knowing all the skiers that I know going to Boulder, it's like this beautiful connection with nature and the mountains. I can't imagine why the skiers aren't protesting more the athletes about the Saudi Arabia like ski competition. Why would they want to go there? How are they not basically boycotting the association?
And let add the question from Raul. Can we refer to what Saudi Arabia is doing as sport washing and greenwashing together? Look, the vast majority of sports events they're hosting at the proposal of Expo 2023, which they won the bidding process 2 hours ago. Oh, shoot, so Rome lost. Is that used to cover a large amount of human rights violation? Does the Saudi government relation with the GB growth? Oh, that's a very good question, Raul. Anyone who wants to answer those two questions?
I would say they don't deserve the title of greenwashing for what they're doing, because it's just so blatantly bullshit, for lack of a better word, that like, yeah.
They're gonna be national mourning in Rome today. Yeah, no, it's but the main problem that I see on Saudi Arabia is FIS. FIS is actually not only not doing anything, but when Protect Our Winters came out with a strong statement, the one that Odin mentioned, with all the World Cup athletes, 5 signing it, they just issued a climate denial statement. So this man who is now at the lead is a disgrace. That's a problem.
I
That's a
will
real
say
problem.
that one of the really interesting things we see with surfing is that protests by surfers refusing to go to South Africa and Indonesia and other places with really intense apartheid states actually had a really big impact on where the international surfing, whatever it is, I'm not a surfer, was willing to hold their things, and it actually started to impact the economies
There's
of
more
these
surfers,
countries.
there's way more surfers in the world. That's how they had an effect. They're very aware.
I mean, we're also, sorry, not to jump in on this, but like, we're also very clearly, if nothing else, if we have learned nothing else about our sort of ethos of internationalism in the last month and a half, it's that we are now in the post-human rights era.
Yeah.
And major nations like the United States, Russia, even the United Nations, human rights is no longer a substantial consideration for international politics.
Saying thank you, Jeff, for joining us. I know you have to go. Birds of Prey is calling. Yeah, no, human rights are not the concern. Who cares? Exactly.
If they ever did.
Yeah, but if you also think the whole electric vehicles is improving our lifestyle here at the cost of huge cost in developing countries, and namely on kids in developing countries. So, you know, it's a huge contradiction in terms. Anyway, thank you everyone for an amazing panel. That was really nice.